But in Islam, we are custodians and trustees of wealth, and ultimately we're going to leave it behind. It's all about institution building. Money should be turned into hasanat. So the institution that you set up to try and turn money into hasanat at scale for perpetuity is the real goal that you should be driving at. The only time I've seen you cry, this was during that period as well, I think.
2020.
And it was in Liverpool Street, and you got a phone call.
Yeah.
What happened?
I just arrived into London. It was in Liverpool Street Station where I was earlier today, and it brings back memories every single time. My wife had been complaining that day before I left that she hadn't felt the baby kick for a little while. And she was 22, I think, weeks. Daughter had passed away. My wife had to, give birth. We had to, name our daughter because she was past a certain point. Yeah, that was a very tough time.
What's your relationship with money like?
Very good.
What's your number? Assalamu alaikum everyone. It's very rare these days that you have Mohsin and I in the same room. Alhamdulillah, we've got offices in London, where we are today, in Cape Town, where I've never been, you've been once, and Dubai, where you usually are. We've been reflecting, the team, alhamdulillah, is now 40 plus people. We manage the wealth of 2,500 clients, $50 million worth of so. You usually, as our audience, don't really see the behind the scenes of what it takes to build a business like this and the journey that we've been on to get to this point. Normally on this channel, we talk about investments and finance. And what we wanted to do instead today was peel back the curtains and I guess share with you a bit more of the raw personal side and introduce you to some of the characters in this story that you've all been part of that you probably never knew even existed. So we're going to dive in. Mohsin.
It's going to be an emotional one.
Where do we meet? How did it all start?
It all started in 2011, I think.
2011, yeah.
2011, ISOC barbecue. I had come back from a year abroad. I had heard that there was a devilish young man that had joined the university in my absence by the name of Ibrahim Khan. And I'd seen a few things popping up on Facebook. Facebook was obviously pretty big then. It's big now, but not. I mean, it served that demographic then. And I was like, all right, let's see what this guy's about. So I rocked up to the ISOC barbecue, met you, and alhamdulillah, I think turned out interestingly well.
Yeah, I know. I remember we ended up in the same, the same room at the end of the evening, right? Where we decided. I was looking for people to chill with that evening, and then you were like the last man standing, which is odd because you had your finals, so you should probably have been concentrating. And I think we've been quite lucky in the sense that we've never had to, like, in a way, when Muslims think about non-Muslims and having to date and find a spouse, it's quite hard and it's quite fraught with risk. And Muslims feel like we've got it a lot easier because we've got this kind of scaffolding around and, it's easy to do that. In many ways, I think becoming a founder or a business partner with someone actually technically is usually a longer relationship. Probably shouldn't be, but usually is a longer relationship than even a matrimonial one in the UK today. And I think we were quite lucky in that we didn't have that risk of, not knowing who the other person was. We'd done business together in various different ways, or, and also not done business and made gulab jamun together in various different ways as well.
Let me ask you a question. Did you ever think about whether this was the right thing? I mean, like, because we left uni, went into law, and then we'd done like various odd bits together. But then starting IFG, which we didn't start as a business, but I guess we had some view that long term it could be something interesting. Did you ever think, or did you ever hesitate or pause or think, actually, is this going to work out?
What, as in
from a relationship?
From a founder? Not really. I think we just kind of stumbled into it, didn't we? I think we quite enjoyed. We were quite, where you enjoy entrepreneurship and doing business and kind of thinking of ideas together, like the creative side of it. And I think we were doing that multiple times, right? We had this city lawyer thing going on. We had Skinsation, that beard brand,
So many things.
I know, it was good stuff, that.
Yeah.
And you bought like a blender, I remember. And you had to buy a new blender because you destroyed, I think, your mum's blender. and we were making beard balm oil.
Yeah.
So I think because we were doing all this other stuff, it was quite natural that I just bring you into this. I remember actually you were like, should I be even part of this thing at the start? Because you were like, well, I'm not, I'm not that into Islamic finance at the time, and you weren't studying it in the way that I was at the time. And I can't remember what I said, but I think I was like, you definitely should be, and you'll add value in your own way.
Yeah. And it's been an interesting journey since then. We obviously started off as a blog, and at the time we were working. I had just had my first child, and I think you probably will soon have children.
Yeah.
At this point, there's this idea, right, and in the mainstream about how it's very difficult to manage family, work, business, like all these different things. I'm curious from your perspective what that looked like, or even looks like now.
I don't know. I think that over time I've got into a nice pattern, and I think things change once kids come along, because before then you don't necessarily. It's a different time commitment. It's a different relationship as well with your spouse. So I think I've become better over time, even though kids have come into the picture. I think you just naturally make time for them. I think in the early years, I probably, I think it was quite easy because, we didn't necessarily have that burden. Yeah, it's a bit of a crap answer really, but I think it was fine. And they say that you give a busy man something to do, and he'll get it done. I felt that is quite applicable to my life, at least, where I was very happy to just say yes to things, and then just dive in and just try and keep on going until the point where it just became a bit too much, and that's where you slightly pull back. And usually I find that I have like 2 or 3 main projects going on at any one time. So at the time, I remember I had the Sheikh Akram Nadwi, Alamiya, the Islamophobia response unit. I was a corporate lawyer, which was a thing, and then I had IFG as well. So those were the main kind of 2 or 3 things, and it was kind of helpful because they feed into each other actually in weird ways, and the more things you are doing, the more nodes that there are to connect between, and actually the value is in the connection. I want to flip the question back to you. What was your answer?
Yeah, it's hard because there are certain demands of your time that everyone has. Everyone has demands on their time, and everyone has rights over you. I think for me, I've been quite lucky. I think we've both been quite lucky in the sense that our respective wives are pretty understanding. That doesn't mean that we're perfect at balancing time, far from it, but I think they've understood when, we just need to go hell for leather.
How do you think our relationship was at that time compared to what it was now?
That's a good question. Obviously, uni, we were just chilling a lot, discussing, putting the world to rights, talking about ideas. I think a lot of people do that when they're young as well. They have certain ideas.
There's a lot of testosterone.
There's a lot of testosterone. There's a lot of idealism, and there's a lack of experience. And we have had the benefit of knowing each other since we were about 20 years old. And we're now both
Mid-30s,
34.
yeah.
And I think your 20s are your most formative years. So we've had the benefit of kind of going through that together. And now we're in a relationship where we have different responsibilities for, when it comes to our team. We have got a very different life because we've got kids and, a wife, etc. And if you compare that to before, when we were just pretty free and, talking about random things. But actually, that's the stuff that sets the foundation, I think, for later. And that's the stuff where you know that you have an alignment of values, shared ethics. Ultimately, what you're doing is you're building trust at that point. So that later, when, obviously now,
There's things like that, for example, another way to put it is that there are things about you that probably no one else knows but me, and no one else will know but me, and vice versa as well.
Yeah.
And that's quite rare that you can trust someone like that.
To that extent. Yeah, 100%. And I think if you pass that into like today's world, we don't work out of the same office anymore. It's actually quite rare that we're physically together. Like these past few days have been quite rare because we travel down 4-hour journey together, spend time in the office like all day, every day for like a few days, and now we're filming together. That's not happened in ages. But the period between where you're quite distant, the thing that you're relying on is all the previous stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
So all the previous like transactions, be that exchanges of information, values, ideas, etc. I think, if I were giving advice, for example, to people, especially in the early days or thinking about going into the business in the future, it really is important that you just spend time with people or the prospective person that you can see yourself going into business with. But I don't think that actually means that, just because you spend time with someone, you're going to do great in business together. Like I think, alhamdulillah, I think that we have both got a specific temperament that lends itself quite well to business. So, we don't, for example, get angry that easily, especially not at each other. Like we might be angry at other things, or one of us might be like a bit angry or frustrated with the other. But I don't think it's ever, alhamdulillah, happened that we're both like at loggerheads with each other. And that's really important in business because you often need, one or the other person to just be quite level-headed. And, for whatever reason, our backgrounds, our upbringings, or, whatever it is, I generally think we're pretty level-headed. That's not the case for everyone. And, you have to be the judge of characters.
Let's get into the story again. So we met at university, we've studied corporate law, and IFG started off as a blog. We're doing this blog thing on the side, we're juggling a few different things. And now, fast forward, we've decided to put this on a more commercial footing. We did a course on stock screening, I remember, on a camera, phone camera. And then we did a IFG Wills, which started as essentially a type form, form, and actually still used quite successfully as a form, even to this day. What was the conversation like with your wife and your parents when it came to deciding, actually, you know what, I'm going to quit? After all the money they put into your education, first kid who went to private school and only kid who went to university, and he's gone to corporate law now. Finally, he's done good. He's qualified, and this is the moment where he can actually start making serious money. Yeah. And he decides to pack it in and join his mate in the back of a van somewhere.
I think with my parents, they were surprisingly quite chilled about it, and I think it's because I spun it in a certain way. I gave it a good sell in terms of like what we'd been up to, the numbers and all of that kind of stuff. And so, at the end of the day, we're Gujarati, so business is like always, going to be attractive. With my wife, I think, again, she was quite relaxed about it all. She's not, materialistic in any sense, so she wasn't concerned about the money aspect of it, which I think really helps. And we were relatively young at that time as well, although not as young as, we weren't like fresh out of university. I think we were, how old then? And was it 2019, 2020, wasn't it?
Yeah, late 30s.
Yeah, late 20s.
Late 20s, yeah.
So actually it's fairly mature. Yeah, I think, as I said before, I think that I was quite lucky that, the closest people around me were pretty relaxed about it, probably trusted my judgment, maybe a bit too much, but they trusted my judgment, I think. What was it like for you?
My wife backed me, and I think she was fine with it. I think the one very important thing that really helped here was that I was working for a US firm on a decent salary. I think it was like 140, 150K at the time. And I'd saved up enough to put the deposit down for a house. And that was what we were holding on for. So I was waiting basically until I got my bonus to then be able to pay the deposit and quit at the end of the year. And I think having that security, and in retrospect, I think that was a really good decision, to just being able to buy the house, and you're paying a mortgage, but instead of a mortgage, instead of rent, it's a mortgage, and at least you've got that security. So I think she was quite happy in that respect. And she was also pregnant with our second child, so that was interesting. And I remember it seems to be in a January every 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years, there's like a confluence of multiple things. So I remember at the time that we moved house, and I left as well, quit my job and went into a new job, and then we had a kid on the way as well that arrived relatively soon. So there was multiple things going on, and COVID-19 happened as well in February, March. So that was an interesting and tumultuous time. I think the only one who was kind of slightly wary was my dad, because he was like, "Oh, I'm not sure. I think you should, maybe give it a few more years, just save a bit more, and then you should go full time," rather than, because he from his perspective, he's a doctor and he's worked all of his life, and I remember that when I first got the offer from Debevoise, the starting salary there for an NQ is more than a experienced consultant doctor would get, in the NHS. And so he's someone who's worked hard all of his life to get to that point. And so there's that aspect of it, which is that, are you sure you really want to be kind of quitting that? And each year, if I was in corporate law still, I sometimes do think about this. If I was in corporate law still, I suspect I'd be on 300 to 400k salary at least.
No, we'd be equity partners by now.
We probably possibly would be, which means that you're probably on roughly the same though. And then it would jump up to a few million after that.
Yep.
But yeah, at the bare minimum, I think we'd be somewhere in the region of 300 to 400. And we're nowhere near that at the moment with our own current salaries, even to this day. And so in that respect, he was right from a cash flow perspective. But he wasn't like very hard against it. He was always someone who wanted to do business, but hadn't quite had, I guess, the role models, or nothing had kind of quite clicked where it made sense to just go for it. And it might be that we as in you and I, were very fortuitous to have parents like that, particularly my parents, where if things go south, we could very easily just move back in with them or rely on them for help, which we're very lucky to have, I think. Yeah, it wasn't too much of a challenge. It was quite an exciting time where we had gone out and we'd gone to our angel investor group, because we'd been doing some early stage startup deals. We went out to our angel investor group and we said we're going to raise money for IFG, and they were very excited. And we were quite surprised and quite, I think, gratified by how much they were willing to support us. And we raised about 250,000. And I remember one of the investors put in £70,000, and we were like, "Oh, right. I'm not sure he should be putting in this much," because we looked him up and he didn't seem to be that, he's, really, really wealthy. And so we actually called him up, I remember at the time, and tried to talk him off the ledge to say that, "Look, are you sure you want to put in this much? You possibly want to just like tone it down a little bit." But he was like, "No, I completely back you guys. And I think, that's what I want to do." And so we said, "All right, fair enough, let's do it." And I guess today, what's his amount worth? So he's 70k times about
nearly 5x.
Yeah.
Almost 5x.
He's done all right, hasn't he?
He's done all right, alhamdulillah. But I think the thing that I'm kind of getting from you, and it's true, is that we were very lucky to be surrounded by people that basically backed and supported us. Be that, people at home, or be that, what are now kind of, clients. So we're very kind of humbled and, grateful for that. I want to ask you a question that I know you wanted to ask me, but I'm going to get there first. Do you think that having kids has held you back as a business owner? So
the argument for saying that it has would be that, you see people in Y Combinator and they're all these young kids and they're just, slumming it out, going at it 24/7. I don't think we've ever had the luxury of doing that. But by the same token, I don't think it's a fair comparison, because I suspect at least 30% of these engineers' time is because they're all single and nerdy, right? So it's taken up by just, having to think about getting married and or whatever, right? It's true. Like there's a meme about how engineers, they say that if you, I saw this meme where the first girl that you bring in, if you bring the girl in too early into a bunch of nerdy engineers, then that business is basically going to break up. Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, like that, I think as a comparison, I don't think that's fair, because and also when you're young and you're a kid, sure, you don't have, other children to look after, but you're not actually working 24/7 anyway. So I think it's a false comparison. And I actually think that from an Islamic perspective, kids bring their own barakah. They force incredible discipline on you in a way that no one else really can. And I remember with my wife, I would really struggle she was kind of one of those people that, is a night owl. But Suleiman, he came along and he sorted her out within like a day. He'd got her to, really cherish sleep and sleep on time, early mornings, going to sleep at the right time. And it's something I couldn't do for like 4 years or so, 5 years or so. And then, Suleiman came along, he sorted it out immediately, and he couldn't even speak at the time.
And he's been sorting you out since.
I know, he's been sorting me out ever since. So Mohsin has young Qasim and Ibrahim and Usaid held you back in business.
In business. I think my sentiments are very similar to yours. Of course, Islamically, we believe that every child comes with their own risk. We're encouraged to have children. So I think it would be not very good if we had this belief children hold you back, because it's not true. I think that you could, like we both could, spend 18 hours a day working quite comfortably. There's enough to do. The reality is that having to stop
is quite good.
It's very good. Yeah, like constraints are a good thing. They could be financial constraints, they could be time constraints, they could be all kinds of constraints. Constraints are generally the foundation of innovation.
Yeah,
I think it's been very positive, alhamdulillah.
Fantastic. Mohsin, let's talk about the barren years. The years where we were wandering lost in the desert, like the children of Israel. The first desert that I don't know if it's a desert really, it's probably unfair to say, is Islam Channel. The first oasis in the desert that we arrived was Islam Channel, where we took out, I think, 2 desks and
I was sweating over the cost.
Yeah, I think it was like 250 quid a desk, possibly, or 125 quid a desk.
I don't know. We can't possibly reveal commercial terms.
Yeah, and I think they had this vision that there's going to be loads of people who take out those desks, but I think I was the only founder living in Ilford at the time, and then COVID happened. And so then it was basically just me, and there was another guy, the caretaker, it's called Yusuf, right? Yusuf, the caretaker, he's a legend. He didn't really speak any English, but he more than made up for it with the languages he did speak.
Yeah. And
I remember that it was that I would often be mistaken for an employee of Islam Channels, because I was just sat there, and then Islam Channel do these fundraisers. So these phones would start ringing away, and then they wouldn't stop ringing, and it was like midday, and someone had been watching a replay from last night or something, and I'd pick up, and they would be like we want to donate £50, and I would be like, well, I don't work for Islam Channel, I just call back later. And they were like, no, you need to, can I talk to your manager? I was like, I am my manager. There's
nobody else.
And they're like, can I talk to someone from Islam Channel? I was like, there's no one here. It's just me.
It's COVID.
And I don't know what to do. And they were like, no, but you need to take this money from me. So then I don't know what I did in the end, to be honest. I might have handed them over to Yusuf or someone. And that would have been a dead end, I suspect.
It was fun times.
It was very fun times. I think, to be honest, it was quite, as you said, it was fun, and there was a lot of optimism and energy. And in retrospect, we didn't really know what we were doing. And I think what we were doing was we were doing lots of little things at 70%. And we were going from 0 to 1 in lots of different directions, but we hadn't really perfected anything, and it was kind of a weird mishmash and crisscross of lots of different products and ideas kind of just wedded together. I don't know, what's your recollection of that time?
Well, it's a tricky one because sometimes you think that, and any business owners watching will sympathize with this idea that, you feel like you're making progress, but deep down in your gut, something's not quite right, or you've not like quite hit the vein that you need to hit. And I think that probably describes us then. We, as you said, kind of went with like the courses, the wills. We had like a pretty thriving website, but we felt that there wasn't we hadn't quite hit the rich vein that we wanted to hit. I think that there is something in being honest with oneself, and it can go one of two ways. I think you either carry on and you kind of ignore that feeling, or you like really lean into that feeling and you say, actually, we need to strip all of this back. And that might mean that you stop making the amount of money that you're making because you know that you need to build a slightly different path in order to get even further, which is, I think, the route that we took, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite scary though, where you have to just essentially park revenue and say that, okay, you've built up this baby of yours and it is making a good few £100,000 sometimes, but we just have to cull it. I remember we had to cull the fund replicator. Remember that? Mm-hmm. And that was, I think that made, I don't know, certainly tens of thousands.
It was a great product. It was a really good product. Like what we were trying to do was this idea that these funds that people invest in, you can just deconstruct them and invest in the stocks yourself. And that's kind of happened now as well.
Amal Invest.
With Amal Invest, which is great. Like I think it's a great product. And the idea went back to the mission. Like for us, it's obviously about leveling up and, equaling the playing field. And you've got in the mainstream, you've got all these public equities funds that are, some of them are really good. And you've got some really good fund managers. And what if you could just like tap into those ideas? Because we can't invest in those funds because a lot of the companies are not Sharia compliant. So what if you could just tap into them and, edit out the ones that are not Sharia compliant and invest in the ideas that are Sharia compliant? So yeah, it was a great product, but we had to take tough decisions, and you often have to take tough decisions in business, and it should, in theory, lead to good things.
Should it have taken us that long to sort ourselves out?
I think there's a conception that, you, as long as you just work at something, you go from like 0 to 1. And the thing that determines, when you go from 0 to 1 is just how much time you put in. So to give you an example, if you've got to build a house, you know that if you just employ more, bricklayers or whatever, and you tell them work a 24-hour shift instead of a 12-hour shift, you'll finish it in, double the time, or half the time, sorry. But when it comes to things like business, I don't know, things just, you need time with it. It's like sleep. I can't say to you that, you've got free 2 days ahead. Why don't you just sleep for 2 days and then you won't need to sleep for 2 nights? Mm. All right. So things sometimes just need time. Like you can work at your speed, but your audience is not going to work at that speed.
Yeah. I think you need truth tellers that you can look to in your journey. And I think for us, there's people like, Maruf from Pelago Health, where, if you deep down, you know the answer to something. For example, when we first had to fire someone, maybe we can talk about that as well. Deep down, when you know the answer to something, but you don't really quite want to say or do it, I think that's where it's quite helpful to go to someone like Maruf, who will just tell you, yeah, just do it.
People who've done it.
That's basically what he does. The Maruf, like we go to him and we say, all right, this is a situation, what should we do? Yeah. I try not to influence him, but I know what he's going to say. Yeah. And then he just says it.
Well, like Shaz from Moses is good at that as well.
Yeah. He's good at that.
So yeah, you just got to look to these people. And yeah, why don't we talk about that? The tough things that we did for the first time. I mean, there's so many first times in business. I mean, we're coming across a lot of first times every day. The first firing is really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, the first firing was difficult. It was clear to me that we had made a mistake and this particular person was not good for the culture, was not working very hard. And at one point, they turned around and said to me that, look, this is not part of my job description to do what you've asked me to do. And I wasn't asking her to do like, I don't polish my shoes or anything. I was asking her, I can't remember what I was asking her about. It was something quite banal, like, you know, something to do with spreadsheets and just updating those. And I was like, well, if you don't do it, then I'm going to have to do it. And yeah, the whole thing was just really, really frustrating. Every single day I was like, this is just really terrible for culture. And then ultimately, yeah, we had a chat with Maruf, and he said, yeah, get rid of her. I had a chat with my brother-in-law as well, Mohammed Bhai, who's also another truth teller. And he said the same thing. And so then we did it. And it's painful because, you know, ultimately you are, you know, at some level you are ending someone's salary, right? And sustenance. But at another level, you have to think of it as a new door that opens for them.
You're freeing them from your shackles.
Well, exactly. If it's not actually a great place for them to thrive,
True,
long term, then why are we wasting each other's time?
Yeah.
Let them do their thing, and you do your thing. And I think there's been, and I actually don't think that because afterwards, at certain points when we've had to let go of certain people, we've done it a little bit more, longed it out sort of thing. And I don't think that's actually the way to do it. It's the more clinical, just cauterize the wound.
It's like zabiha.
Is just a better way to do it for everyone.
Firing bad people is really easy though. Like,
yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's difficult
it's
in the
cathartic.
moment. It's difficult in the moment because you don't want to have that conversation. But it's an easy, like, you know, it's the right thing. It's like having to go for surgery or something. Like, you don't want to do it, but you know that you have to do it.
Yeah.
What's harder is when someone is actually a pretty decent performer, but you know that for the next
good friend
and a good friend,
good person,
but you know that for the next stage of growth, or, you know, for whatever reason, this person is no longer right, and they could have actually been really good as well. What about those situations?
Yeah, it's brutal. But I think you ultimately have to go back to the mission. And I think of it as, like, at some point, I sometimes say it on these calls, you know, maybe I have to get subbed off, you know, subbed off to the bench, or sold to another company, sold to another team, because the mission is the thing that really matters. And if I or whoever is not quite the right fit for this particular role, then the reason why they joined us was because they cared about the mission. If they didn't care about the mission, they shouldn't be here anyway. But if they cared about the mission, then they will get it. And they will be like, okay, yeah, if it's not quite the right fit or click at this particular juncture, then, you know, so be it. And you have to head off. It's never easy. And I think have you done any of the firings? You've had to do some, haven't you? I remember that. I did the first few. I felt like I had to. I should do it, because if you're the leader of this thing, then you have to face into the most difficult stuff. Yeah. What do you think? What are your recollections from these tumultuous times?
Yeah, very similar. Very similar. Hard, where you got to do it.
And the thing is, like, if you reflect back on it, we're actually on very good terms, apart from the bad levers, where we just had to get rid of them because they were terrible. Actually, on everyone else that I can think of, we're actually on very good terms with the people that we've had to let go, which hopefully I think is a good signal for that we probably did, you know, something right, at least in that interaction. And we did historically, you know, give we're very generous in terms of the exits and what have you. But yeah, lest the audience kind of get the wrong impression, it's not been that often.
No.
Other thing I wanted to talk about was the only time I've seen you cry. This was during that period as well, I think.
2020.
And it was in Liverpool Street, and you got a phone call.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. I just arrived into London. Yeah, it was in Liverpool Street Station where I was earlier today, and it brings back memories every single time. My wife had been complaining that day before I left that she hadn't felt the baby kick for a little while. And she was 23 2, I think, weeks. Yeah, our daughter had passed away, and kind of got that news then, rushed home. My wife had to, give birth. We had to, name our daughter because she was past a certain point, bury her, etc. Yeah, that was obviously a very tough time. And the other thing that I think you don't know as well is that at that time we just got the Forbes 30 under 30 thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they'd asked for a photo, and I had to we had to do it at that time. It was like in the days after, and so whenever I look at that photo as well, that's like a memory as well. But these are the things that happen in the background. I don't think I told the team at the time. Maybe I did, I don't know, or maybe some time after. Yeah, it's these things, obviously we're humans, right? And things happen in life that necessarily interact with your core, and that means that you can't then give everything to the business because you need to concentrate on certain other things at that time. But yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm very philosophical about it. Mm-hmm. I still often refer to, I count her amongst my children. I know that she's in Jannah, will be in Jannah waiting. So yeah, lucky me. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I know. I remember because I don't think I've ever seen you cry before. So yeah, that was a tough one. And I remember we were meeting Daniel's wife, future wife, Anisa, about maybe Mars will know her. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I actually explained why you weren't there, because I didn't really know what to say.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, he had like a family emergency or something, and so then he had to go back. Yeah, so I think that was quite a profound memory. The other one I think was, what other profound memories have we got from that time? That barren period. I think the other one was fundraising, where we now had somehow frenetically, doing stuff, got to a point where we were turning over, I think about 250,000 pounds somehow, even though in retrospect we had a very brittle business model. And we went and we got asked by a certain billionaire to come in and, was very intrigued by what we were up to and was potentially interested in investing. And we weren't necessarily looking for investment at the time. And so before we knew it, we'd been kind of sucked into a process, into a fundraising process. And we thought, okay, hang on, we should probably go out to everyone. And it was tricky because I think you were essentially running the business during that period, and I was essentially just fundraising during that period. And you're trying to convince institutional investors to part with their money. And the story that you're telling them, partly it's, because it's an Islamic fintech, it's not really been something that they kind of understand and appreciate. Partly because it was not actually, in retrospect, I think, a great story to tell. I think we got quite close with a whole bunch of people. Ultimately, we were very happy that the guys at Outward backed us. I think they probably just had, deeper insight into this space and had been looking into this space, a long time before. So I think they were kind of naturally inclined. And then I remember that we had this situation where, the whole round had dragged on for so long that we were given about a week where we had to raise. The round was £3 million. We'd raised £1.5 million, and now we had to raise £1.5 million more within a week. Bearing in mind this is the end of Ramadan, and for the last 3 months we've raised 1.5. Now we've got a week to raise £1.5 million. And if we don't raise that, then the whole thing just kind of falls apart. Yeah, we did it by hook or by crook. I think we've been historically we respond well to extreme pressure, and it generally has a good outcome at the end of it. And I remember we put it onto the platform, and we said, all right, let's just see what happens on the platform. We've never really raised this much money anyway from the platform, so let's see. And we went to sleep, and we thought, all right, if we can get to 400k, it would be a good idea. It'd be nice. And we woke up, and it was like 800 at least on the platform, plus like a few hundred 250 off the platform, and then we had to switch it off because it kind of got out of hand. And that momentum then just helped us get this over the line. And there was, some mad scrambling that we've done with some of the early members of the team, where they had to, get these ID documents and proof of addresses, scouring the internet for the phone numbers of these people and tracking them down, and rearguard actions, and just, there's a lot of give the analogy of a very rickety pirate ship that just really should be sinking, but somehow makes its way to where it needs to go.
How does that all compare to today? It's like, us running that business then.
Before you get to that, I remember one other thing, because I get quite nervous at times, as you know, like with public speaking. And I remember that I got you to come on to certain calls. I don't know if you remember this, where I'm like, okay, I'll lead this. And if I'm off to the races, then, you just let me go, crack on.
Back up.
But if I get tongue-tied, or because I get lightheaded, then you need to step in and just guide the conversation in the right direction. And I remember that was the final round for Outward was one of those calls where I was like, I need backup. We need to make sure that we get this right. Yeah, I remember it just started off at a nice clip, and I felt, all right, this is good. Yeah, and we were away.
Got some early runs on the board.
I know, exactly.
The other, I guess, iconic moment in our history is getting authorized in that whole process with the with the FCA, which is long and laborious, and lots of questions back and forth. I mean, for good reason. Obviously, they're a regulator, but when you're a startup and you've got a finite amount of time, literally you've got a finite amount of time because you're loss making and you've only got so much cash in the bank, and every month counts, and the FCA are not really that incentivized to get your thing over the line very quickly. Tell me about your emotions then.
It was really hard, because again, it's not something that you can share with everyone in the team, and the FCA has the power to just shut you down or not listen to you. And the thing is that we went through a huge amount of due diligence, because we've got this IFG channel and there's this new other channel, and the separation between the two. And over time, the FCA had basically got us to manage to switch off everything. So it was like, okay, now we're happy to authorize you. And then I was like, okay, great, this is brilliant. We're now going to get authorized. And that was on the Monday, and they said, yeah, if we could actually switch you on now if you like, or I can switch you on Wednesday, so that it kind of aligns up with something. I was like, all right, yeah, great. Wednesday's fine. He made like a logical argument for it. But the problem was that someone internally then raised a flag, which is completely unprecedented, that we get a letter to say that, yeah, you're going to get authorized. And then you have to go back again. And for 3 more months, you are treading water and dealing with questions.
I remember that.
And each time it's like highly stressful. I don't actually know why in retrospect, but I guess at the time it's because they're very, you're thinking, hang on, if I misstep here, then you just may not get authorized.
You're going to send me to jail.
Yeah, well, maybe, I don't know about that, but maybe. And if you misstep and that you don't get authorized, then actually there's no way back here.
Yeah.
Because, you're not, because the guys that we were with under someone else's license, they'd effectively said, we're not going to let you do anything.
Yeah.
And because you're going through this FCA process, so we're not going to let you carry on. And they were very expensive. So we were paying them £5,000 a month for doing nothing for 6 months, which is mental. And the FCA obviously not letting you do anything. And this is an important part of how you make money as a business. But I think we still managed to, duck and dive and somehow get through it. In that period, I think we just fell on some other revenue sources and just, tried to make ends meet. What do you recollect from that time?
Yeah. I think the tricky thing about times like that is what you were saying about the not being able to share, because I don't know about your wife, or my wife has like no, understanding or like sense of the regulator and like what this stuff involves. Like obviously at a high level, you understand what the FCA is and what they do, but you don't understand the I guess, the tension of like, getting a round of questions, having to like organize that, manage that whole process, go back to them, wait for them, like all that kind of stuff. Is like, it's not something that many people can relate to. And then even internally with your own team, I remember that I think my memory from that time is just telling them like nearly every week that, at the moment we're just like, we're underground and we're building, and there is light above the surface, and we will rise above this surface one day. And just keep telling them that for like week upon week upon week upon week. And then in the end, when you're actually able to say, yes, here is that moment, it's nice, it's gratifying, because I don't know if they ever did lose faith or not, but I'm sure they had a few question marks. And on the note of team, I think it's worth spending a bit of time on that relationship, like, the employer-employee relationship, because we've talked about like the slightly bad side, the firing, but the reality is that, the vast majority of the team have been awesome for us, and some of those have moved on, like they've been awesome for us and moved on, and some of them are here today, and we're obviously, alhamdulillah, growing, so we're getting, awesome new people all the time. How do you manage, or like, what should your relationship be with an employee? They're going to watch this, by the way.
Yeah, maybe. I think of, ultimately it's about the mission, and in order for us to get to a certain point, we need certain things done, and that's where you start hiring for someone. And then I think once they're in, it's about trying to get to a level of, trying to get the most out of them. Like, I want them to remember this time with us as a time which was like, wow, I did some incredible work, and I really like grew as an individual, and I really progressed. And I want them to not have the experience I think I had at certain points in my legal career, where you're not really working with people who are your friends. It's not really that nice an environment, and you're working really long hours, and you don't really believe in what you're doing, in the sense that it's, you're obviously doing it, it's halal, and it's, there's a purpose for why you're doing it. You're getting paid very well to do it, but it's soulless work, and I don't want them to have that. And I think that's why we have this very strong ethic, and it's primarily driven by you, to be honest, and I've just kind of left you to it, and I just like fall into the structures of it, which is, the weekly one-to-one catch-ups, 15 minutes catch-ups, where you ask how they're doing, and you give them that space. I would count pretty much all of our employees, or most of our employees, as friends as well. I'd like to think, at least the ones I've met. I've not met some of them now in South Africa. It's also, at some level, it is like a parent-child relationship as well, weirdly, because you have to look after them. You have to go out there and earn, your bread, your daily bread for everyone to eat. And you have to discipline them at certain points. But then you also have to nurture them to grow into where they could be. Yeah, I think it is quite like a parent-child relationship at some levels. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I would agree with pretty much all of that. I think it's fair and true to say that you're always going to like personally get along better with some people than others, and employees are no different. But obviously, you treat them all the same. I think from like a culture perspective, I think it's always interesting because different people build their cultures in different ways. And from the outside, when you hear a term like culture, it sounds like very vague and wishy-washy, but we all experience culture. Like even, like we had an investor in here in the office yesterday, right? And I'm sure he got a sense of the culture, which you can't describe. Like even if we tried to describe it now on this video, compared to if someone just walked into the office, they'd pick up on it instantly. And I think that, that's the really important thing. It's about like, what's the culture that you're able to create? And sometimes, well, it is bigger than us. It's also about each of these individuals and what they add to the team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or what they take away. And our job is, in a way, it's a bit like a kind of custodian relationship.
Yeah.
Where, we need to of course, like guide and shape and just be careful about, you know, what's going on, and we add our bits. And if we see things going in a certain direction, we need to stamp that out. Famously or infamously, I, for example, banned the word bro in our company. And that's just a stance that we took, because I don't want us to be that company. And you know, that's part of our culture. And so when people come in here, I think they can feel that. And so I think the important thing is how you build, you know, the atmosphere in the four walls. Of course, nowadays with the split of like, you know, remote and office, that can be quite difficult. But I think overall we do an okay job. So Mars has just added off camera that in our handbook, you know, we've put in there that we're not a family. You know, we explicitly tell employees that we're not a family, which might seem a bit odd to some people, because a lot of companies, they're very big on like, you know, we're a family and, you know, it's all love, etc. But that's not our view. Our view is that we're much more like a high performing sports team where, sure, there's like a lot of good camaraderie, but really what we're doing is we're fighting for something, we're going for something. And what that necessarily means is that there's going to be moments where we challenge each other, where we don't agree with one another, where we call someone out for not performing very well, where we praise someone for, you know, doing something really well. And families are built on unconditional love, and companies should not be built on unconditional love. So that's, I think, something really important that you know, has been a feature of our business.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect to it is how me and you are quite different. I think I'm the one who kind of drives things, and you know, probably want things done like very fast, with a lot of intensity. Whereas I think you're the one who is the, you know, much more empathetic, you know, person that helps shape things like the culture, for example. And then also, I think you're the one who sets up systems and processes and has that attention to detail. And I think that's quite a good way for, you know, for team members to, you know, to have different, you know, experiences from the leadership team. Because I suspect if it was just me on my own, people probably get burnt out.
Yeah.
If it was just you on your own, things wouldn't get done.
Yeah. Or indeed, if both of us was like very similar, right? Because then they'd have like two people going, you know, absolutely hell for leather. It'd probably be like a lot of burnout, a lot of depression and all that kind of stuff. And similarly, if you've got two people who are, you know, quite careful, quite calculated, you know, not just willing to do something on a sixpence, so to speak, that's difficult as well. So I think that you know, going back to what we were talking about in the early part of the video, something, to be honest, like I think that's something we've learned about each other. Like I don't think back then
we didn't know that.
We didn't know that actually.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because that's just a bit of luck, or, you know, obviously God's will. But that didn't come out so much in the early relationship, when it's a bit more like friends, but it does come out in a business.
I wanted to talk about an hour, like now that we've got a business that is actually a business making, you know, decent money, good few £1 million a year. We've got a relatively large social media presence as well. How do you, let's talk about fame first. You're now a celebrity in Bolton, recognized on the streets.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I always seem to get stopped when no one else is around. No, I think I don't enjoy attention and all that kind of stuff. So I'm more than happy to get approached. Like I actually do enjoy, you know, people coming up and saying, "Oh, you Mohsin, have a quick conversation." I do actually enjoy that, but I'm not someone, as you know, who seeks the limelight. So I just see it as it's a good thing, I think, to be recognized for something, hopefully, that you're doing good, rather than being recognized for something that you do bad. So I'm quite happy and positive about that. What about you?
I think we're quite. I'm quite lucky in that I think I've got a healthy relationship with it. In that I genuinely don't care that much. Naturally, because I'm probably more the face. You know, if you go into a mosque, for example, you will 100% get people recognizing you, or a wedding, or any Muslim dense area, you'll get some of that. But because we're not one of the very famous influencers. The kind of attention we get is more from relatively cerebral, professional Muslim men a lot of the time. Also women, but mainly Muslim men, people who are professionals basically, who are interested in the subjects we're talking about. So in that respect, it's good because, we're interested in talking to, people who are interested in the same subject as us. It's not actually like crazy. It's, we're not the levels of fame of, let's say, Mufti Menk or someone where I'm sure if you walk down the street, it would get a bit out of hand. And for me, it's very instrumental. Like ultimately, it goes back to the mission. If I don't need to be making the videos, I don't know if I actually intrinsically enjoy the fame of it. I mean, it's nice. There's nothing wrong with it. I actually like I take energy from the craft of, having to front up things, or the craft of, being creative. I really enjoy that. I remember when I was in university and I was in a play, and I would really enjoy, I don't think you were there at the time, where I was Marx in Soho, the one-man play, the 1 man, 1 hour play. Did you see it? You weren't there?
No, it's not.
Okay, so I was after you. I think it was the year after. And I remember...
It all went to pot after I left.
And I remember that play where it's just you on the stage for 1 hour, acting as Karl Marx and various other characters. So it was quite a demanding performance, and alhamdulillah, I think I did quite well at it. And then you get applause at the end. Naturally, you get the applause at the end of a performance, and that's the moment where I actually weirdly didn't like it that much, because I didn't dislike it, but I felt kind of almost embarrassed by it. Mm-hmm. But I did really enjoy the acting side of it, and at some level, I think it's the same today. Where, people come up to you and you're like, they say, oh, you mashallah, you built a fantastic business, or you've done this and that and the other. I'm very, very self-critical. So all I can think of is it's a complete mess.
You don't know that.
I've not done anything. And, my life's a failure. Yeah. And my wife gets frustrated at this, because she's like, you're going to go into this ridiculous, self-pity kind of mode. Whereas clearly you've, objectively achieve decent things, but that's genuinely what I think. So I when people think about, all right, and of course when on video we will explain, we've got 2,500 investors. We said at the start of this video, 150 million or so AUM. It sounds impressive, but actually when I think about the mission, where it's table stakes to have $1 trillion, really deep down, I am actually embarrassed by that 140 million, which is weird.
Shocking behavior.
I know. And I probably get embarrassed even when we get to a few billion. Yeah, so that's how I think about it.
Good.
Last question is, what's your relationship with money like?
Very good.
What's your number? What's enough?
What's enough money? So I think of the two of us, I enjoy the slightly finer things in life. So I suspect that my number might be a little bit higher than yours.
Well, we know, don't we? Having had this discussion before.
Last night. Yeah, I think...
What do we mean by the number, by the way?
So the number is what's the amount of cash or money flows per year. Essentially just you're comfortable with. For me, comfortable means that you don't need to think about money. That's how I kind of define it. And I think it's somewhere around probably net of any taxes or whatever. I think it's somewhere between 150 and 200.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's interesting what you said, that you don't have to think about money, because I think I'm probably the more naturally optimistic of the two of us. So that's why my number is lower.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think my number is probably about 100, 150.
Yeah.
And I think, from a total net perspective, the number that at least I have at the moment is 3 million. I think three and a bit million is probably more than enough for everything. I think the rest should be given away. That's what I think.
Or do you think you're billionaires?
I think they've clearly done well in business, but in Islam we are custodians and trustees of wealth, and ultimately we're going to leave it behind. So really, I think that it's all about institution building in a way that money should be turned into hasanat, and so the institution that you set up to try and turn money into hasanat at scale for perpetuity, I think is the real goal that you should be driving at. And of course you should there's nothing wrong with enjoying a bit, enjoying life and, living a happy life and comfortable life. But I think there's a clear difference between that and extravagance. There's only so many, holidays, or there's only so many yachts that you need to buy. Probably 0 yachts actually is the right number to buy. And because it's just a mode of transport really, isn't it?
Yeah, but what if you're struggling to get across the water?
Get an aeroplane.
So you think that, I like what you've said. You're saying that what we want to create is a hasanat printing machine, and the fuel for that is money. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
That's what I'm saying.
I'm going to ask something that might seem insensitive, but it's not. So when we say hasanat, good deeds in quantity, how do you layer in impact into that? So you can create lots of we could do there's lots of ways to create.
Yeah. I think impact is really important. I think that's a given that you should do it. It's like energy.
But does impact affect hasanat?
Yeah, because you just get more of them, right?
Okay, so let me give you an example.
So you could maybe get more hasanat from £100 if you're more impactful.
Why?
Because you end up doing more good in the world as a result of that. So it's like energy. Like you could take the same amount of energy. You need energy to do good deeds, and with that same energy, you could do a certain amount of work, and that's probably a certain amount of good deeds. But with the same energy, if you're more efficient with it, that you could maybe if you're ladling out biryani to poor people, it takes a certain amount of energy to do that. You give it to 15 people, but then you start using this the lever principle or something, and you get like a longer spoon. And that's using your mind, and it's more efficient, and that way you get to 50 people. Or you say, okay, with the same energy, I'm going to try and recruit 3 or 4 volunteers, and they can give it to 100 people with the same energy.
But you're just talking about quantities. I'm talking about impact. So, for example, you can ladle out biryani to 15 people. I don't know. Name me like a very niche, impactful thing to do, like the Islamophobia response unit, for example, right? So you could put money into the Islamophobia response unit. This is not an advert for them.
Yeah.
But, and you might end up funding, let's say, one person's defense.
Yeah.
So which one's more impactful?
Versus what? So one person's defense versus?
Like feeding people biryani.
I think it's hard to compare between those two things.
But that's what I'm asking you to do.
I think in the abstract, if we think about, because ultimately what we're talking about is what would we want to do with the wealth, and / what hopefully we are doing with the wealth already. So I think that's important. I think you just have to do what you want to do anyway. I think that you can't hyper optimize between out of all of these 15 things, this is the thing that is the most impactful and we want to do that. I think there's a gradient where this is just this end is complete wastefulness, not really thoughtful at all. And this end is really hyper optimized. I think this is the thing, but you can't really know. I'm not there and I'm not there. I'm kind of over here where I think that, okay, you should be thoughtful about what you're trying to do. And when we think about impact, there should be some kind of taxonomy around how we're going to try and measure it, or what does it mean? Maybe it's not measurable, but you want to have some kind of articulation of what that looks like. And then once you've got that, then you start optimizing for that. And it might be that the articulation is wrong and you have to change that over time. I don't know. That's how I approach it.
Interesting.
Mohsin, what's your relationship to Allah like, and how important has that been on this journey?
It's the single most important relationship, because we know that the morals, ethics, values, principles that come with being a Muslim ground you and center you. So we've discussed so many things, but the common thread through all of that is that we know, or we've been told, how to deal with all of these things. Like the most difficult moment that I've shared today, like the reason I'm so optimistic and philosophical about it is because of Islam, right? And similarly, when you're like going through challenging times, etc., we've got so many mechanisms on how to deal with that, why this is, a good thing rather than a bad thing. Just having that is such a big blessing. How about for you?
Yeah, completely agree. I think that one of the most powerful things is that and quite liberating things is that we've already succeeded if we have the right intention. Like, so I regularly will make the dua that, I would like IFG to be a reason for, the return of the ummah to its, I guess, former glory, or the return of its, ascendancy, and for it to be what we do here, to be a reason for us to enter Jannatul Firdaus. And it might be that, and I wonder that, it probably isn't something we'll see in our lifetime, but it might be that in 200-300 years' time, something that we did here, that we sparked off here, and this is for me why I think like long-term institution building is so important. Something that we do here that sparked off here might be the reason that mission succeeds eventually. And I think that's quite liberating, that, I'm not a perfect human being, and I'm not the most skilled of human beings, and we are not the most well-resourced of companies. But if we have that sincere attention, then we actually have the chance, the kind of glory that perhaps would have been much more easy for people who were more well-resourced or brighter, or, from better, backgrounds or education kind of achievements. And then, of course, as you said, the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that allows you to see the world for what it really is. Because, blessing and hardship are all just really the same thing. And I think that I have become better over time, not perfect, but better over time at treating both of those things much more similar than I did before. I would say it, that you need to treat it similarly, but I think now psychologically, I'm more in that realm where I think I do, it's not perfect, but I think I'm getting in the right direction. Mr. Patel, it's been a pleasure.
Likewise, till the next time.
I'll see you in Dubai.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.